Ramatra has been super buffed and a wave of nerfs to other heroes has come out, which is going to make things interesting. As per usual, we're going to work through how the tier list has changed and adjusted with these new balance notes and maybe get a glimpse as to what's going to be meta in this mid-season area. Christmas time is here and Santa has left in your stocking an easy and quick way to get to GM. There has never been a better time to get your membership to GameLeap.com. You can use code SANTA at checkout and get 50% off. Not only that, not only will you get access to everything, but 10 people will be picked for a free VOD review from our top coaches. That is an insane amount of value, so hurry up and click on the link right now and get your membership today. Let's get started off with the D tier and with the tank role first. Starting us off strong in the D tier is going to be Wrecking Ball. I honestly don't know why anyone would play this hero right now. He just feels so weak in every single element aside from coming back to stall a point, and even then you could argue that D.Va is far better at it. Ball just can't seem to get a footing, so he's D tier. Moving on into the C tier, we have Zarya, and she's received some okay buffs, but just doesn't bring enough to the table with what the top level tanks are capable of accomplishing. I love playing her, but she's a hard C tier choice right now. Next, we have a staple of the C tier even since the launch of Overwatch 2, Junker Queen. She received some oddly placed nerfs last patch, and yes, they were nerfs. I don't care about the slight bleed damage increase. However, word on the street is that she is going to be receiving some spicy buffs next patch, so stay tuned. And finally in the C tier, we have our latest addition, Doomfist. It's like when someone wins the lottery and then goes overboard and loses all their money again, putting them back in the gutter. He had his 2 weeks in the sun with the insane buffs he was given, but now has been nerfed back to his semi-original state of why even bother. Moving on up into our B tier, we start things off with Monkey, and Monkey has slowly been getting worse and worse as the higher DPS tanks have started to become meta. I don't really see why you'd run Monkey right now when Hog is just so strong. Monkey isn't bad on paper, so after the Hog nerfs we may see a resurgence of Monkey power, but for now he's kind of just stuck at the B tier. Our second B tier tank is going to be D.Va, and it's honestly hard to place her here, but she falls into a similar stage as Monkey. She has strong abilities and is not bad on paper, and good divas can push her extremely high in her current state, but other tanks simply offer more as far as utility and damage go, which just kind of leaves her at the B tier. Moving on into the A tier, we're going to start things off with Reinhardt, and Rein seems to just be getting better and better as time has gone on. He is super capable on control maps due to the close combat nature of them, and with there not being as many good shield tanks, Shatter has become a super strong ultimate. It's especially good against Curica ult, where the enemy team likes to stack in a nice straight line for you. Next up we have Sigma, who definitely finds his niche on maps that require long-range sightline crossing due to his shield strength. This gives him a really solid role to fill that other tanks simply can't do quite as well, and his kit is solid all around as well. He isn't the best on every map though, which leaves him just a cut below at the A tier. Okay, moving on into our S tier, we of course have everyone's favorite tank, Roadhog. Hog still has his one shot for now, and this pick potential allows for him to be a truly powerful tank, and he has a ton of sustain to back that up. He really is the carry tank hero right now and is a comfortable S tier choice. Next up in our S tier, we have a new addition, Ramatra. Ramatra is a beast now. This movement speed buff makes his nemesis form significantly stronger, and his kit is extremely versatile. He does a considerable amount of damage, and I would not at all be shocked if we had a Ramatra meta coming shortly. Our final new S tier tank is actually going to be Orisa. Her buffs flew a bit under the radar, but they're actually extremely solid. For starters, her gun fall off range has been increased, meaning she can deal damage much further away than before, but more importantly, her ultimate now pierces through shields. Orisa was already starting to climb the tier list as a good counter to tanks like Roadhog, but now with the buffs helping her counter things like Reinhardt, she lands comfortably at our S tier. Moving on into our DPS role, we're gonna get started right at the C tier with, of course, Genji. Genji has had a fall from grace to be sure, and he is now struggling to compete with most of the DPS roster. He just doesn't have enough punch to him, sadly, and that makes him C tier. Our next C tier is going to be Hanzo, and honestly, his arms bug makes him nearly unplayable. It adds so much time to adjusting their shot that you can't really easily keep track of enemies you are fighting, especially when you use Storm Arrow. He already was a bit weak. The bug has made him significantly worse for now, so he's C tier. Our next C tier DPS is going to be Sombra, and Sombra just doesn't have any real power or damage to her in the current meta. Even her EMP feels lacking nowadays, with the preference on slower, high damage team comps that can struggle to follow up on it. Our final C tier DPS is going to sadly be Cassidy. He really only works with a pocket and if you land constant headshots. His kit is just too one-dimensional to be anything other than C tier, and he doesn't even one-shot, meaning he can't just get away with it like Widow can. Moving up onto our B tier, we are going to start with Soldier 76. Soldier is solid all around, decent at anything but not a master at it. He has solid mobility, solid pick potential with his helix, and good damage output. He also has self-sustain with his heal pad, but odds are there's a better fit for the team in the A or S tier than Soldier can realistically compete with. Our next B tier pick is going to be Pharah, and she has some good damage and spam output, but she just falls behind on pick potential compared to some of the other DPSs. In some situations, a Pharah can be super powerful, but honestly, Junkrat can do her job and better since he has his mines. Next in our B tier is Reaper. Reaper can really feel the impact of the movement speed passive being removed. It's seriously bad. He was once a solid choice because of that passive, and now if he doesn't have a Lucio, he just can't produce the same value. Plus, he's really easy to one-shot his hog, so that's also a negative. B tier. Next in our B tier is going to be Symmetra, and Sim is a bit slept on right now. Her damage output is surprisingly high. The recent buffs have made her primary fire a pretty lethal close range option for her, and her ultimate is still to date one of the best ultimates in the game when it's used correctly. Next we have Mei in our B tier, and not much has really changed about her. She's the same Mei she's always been. Use your wall to split targets for value, you have a good ultimate, and you struggle on a lot of maps because they're more open. Our final B tier DPS is going to be Torb, and Torb's kit is still really good, and he can deal solid spam damage and take 1v1s that other DPSs would normally be afraid to. However, his overall potential is just simply lower than those in the A tier and S tier. It's not a knock against him, I just feel like he falls behind most of the time because there are just simply better characters. Okay, moving into our A tier, I want to say any DPSs at this tier or above can 100% be interchangeable. I think the DPS is a super competitive role at the moment as far as balance goes. All the top DPS picks are pretty fairly balanced and situational between each other. It's definitely interesting to see, and maybe I'll end up being wrong as the season goes on. Anyway, our first A tier DPS is going to be Sojourn. She received another set of straight nerfs, but I don't think it will be enough to stop her from being a super high rated pick. She may be a bit worse, maybe not a 100% pick rate, but her versatility and power is still up there. Our next DPS may come as a surprise to some, but I'm going with Bastion, and I actually think Bastion has a ton of potential as a high level DPS with the slower tank meta taking place. He also completely nullifies some of the quicker tanks like Winston. Overall, he's a fantastic character, and with good aim, you can definitely duel many DPSs on the roster. He also synergizes extremely well with the meta supports at the moment, which overall just ends up leaving him in the A tier. Our next A tier DPS is going to be Widowmaker. She's obnoxiously strong at range. She can turn team fights entirely on her own from distances that only other Widowmakers can deal with, and the low shield meta taking form has only made her even stronger. A tier. Next up in the A tier, we have Echo, who hasn't really changed since the last list. She is hyper mobile, has tons of burst damage, is one of the most vertically mobile heroes, which gives her many unique benefits, and she has a strong ultimate to boot. She's a solid A tier choice. Our final A tier DPS is going to be Tracer. I think the damage nerf is noticeable from where she was before, but she has definitely not gotten bad as a result of it. She's just a little worse than before. She has tons of self-sustain, she's a pretty independent hero, and she can get a lot of value in the meta right now, so she's still an easy A tier pick. Okay, in our S tier, we have two DPSs that, as I said before, can be interchangeable with the A tier choices. I just think that these two happen to be picked slightly more often, and they're just a small cut above the others. First, in the S tier, we have Junkrat, and Junk has plenty of pick potential with his one-shot combo. His Tire is a really strong ultimate, and his overall DPS is very powerful in the current meta. He can melt tanks and is just formidable all around, making him a solid and surprising pick for the S tier. Our final DPS is going to be Ashe. Ashe has always been decent in Overwatch 2, but now that we're seeing a reduction in broken DPSs, she finally really has a chance to shine. Ashe's ultimate Bob is a strong one that can do a lot of work in a team fight, and her gun can output a lot of pressure onto squishy targets. Her kit is solid and she can control fights on her own, making her S tier. Okay, moving on to our final and smallest role, support, we start things off with the D tier, and in that D tier next to Ball, we have Brigitte. She's still bad. Her kit provides no real utility other than I can heal and boop, and she doesn't even do either of those things better than most of the other supports. She's not that tanky either, which leaves her at the D tier. She's just a bad choice. Up into the C tier, we have Moira, and Moira is a support that simply just does not have enough utility. She's a pretty solid climbing character for the low ranks, but she doesn't have enough fight win potential at the higher ones. She pretty much relies on the enemy missing a bunch of shots for you to get offensive value, so she stays at the C tier. Moving into our B tier, we have Baptiste. Bap just has been utterly replaced by Kiriko in my opinion. He doesn't have enough mobility or sustain to be able to play in a good healing range, and although he is definitely better in slower comps, I think he's just okay at best, so he stays at the B tier. Our last B tier support is going to be Zen, and it really pains me to put him here. He's super solid on the slower metas, but there's no reason to really run him over the other supports. He doesn't have enough healing output, and I think his Discord orb orb is just barely not enough to make that trade-off worth it right now. He's still decent though and can pop off extremely hard, so he's just at the B tier. Moving into our A tier, we start off with Ana, who received some mild buffs this patch. I don't think she's going to end up being meta due to Kiriko still being extremely strong, but Ana can definitely hang with the top level supports due to her range and consistent heal output. The increased nade duration is of course also a nice buff. Our second A tier support is going to be Mercy, who was honestly S tier prior to the Sojourn nerfs, but has been since knocked down a peg. Damage boost is still very powerful on most of the top level DPSs, and pocketing is a super viable strategy right now, so Mercy is a solid choice, but potentially not the best support, leaving her at the A tier. Moving into our top supports at the S tier, we of course are going to start with Kiriko. She received a nerf to her Suzu invuln duration this hotfix, but that doesn't change the fact that she has consistent and high heal output, immense pick potential, two of the best abilities in the game, a super fast charging ultimate, which is arguably the best one in the game. She also has lots of mobility. I mean, you get the point. She's still a potent support with lots in her kit, so she stays at the S tier. Our final hero for the list is going to be the Frogman Lucio. Speed boost turns even the non-mobile comps into mobile ones, and sound barrier saves really dodgy looking team fights and can even turn them into wins. He hasn't changed much, but doesn't need to in order to remain at the S tier for his role. That's going to do it for today's tier list. Be sure to like and sub for more educational guides, and I will see you all next time. Take care and peace. Christmas time is here, and Santa has left in your stocking an easy and quick way to get to GM. There has never been a better time to get your membership to GameLeap.com. You can use code SANTA at checkout and get 50% off. Not only that, not only will you get access to everything, but 10 people will be picked for a free VOD review from our top coaches. That is an insane amount of value, so hurry up and click on the link right now and get your membership today.